When people go into relationships, they come with it sometimes with baggages.
You have to be able to communicate, and even to other more sensitive topics like intimacy, like being able to talk about what you like, what you don't like, how you like it, etc.
For example, you could have a wealthy man that maybe marries somebody that's maybe not as wealthy as them, and then there's that stereotype of, maybe this person is just there for my money, or even cultural stereotypes of that exist in certain places in the world in terms of Africans.
I was just about to say that a lot of no, but seriously, when Ibrahim first came to St. Lucia, and because we were dating at the time, Hi guys, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Linnell and this is my husband Ibrahim. And this month we are celebrating 5 years of being married, which is insane. Can you believe it's been 5 years?
Yeah, it's gone by quickly.
So in honor of our 5th anniversary, we decided to make the month of July a little bit about marriage. So today though, we are going to talk about 5 things that we learned in 5 years of marriage. Just a disclaimer, this video is not, I always like to give this disclaimer, this is not us giving advice because we have the perfect marriage and we think that this advice is gonna give you the perfect marriage. We are just sharing our experience. All right, so what is it that you want to start with?
For me, one of the things that I've noticed that has been really impactful in my marriage has been the importance of having similar principles and values, as well as having a similar a singular authority, if that makes sense. By that I mean the Bible.
You're talking about our faith, that it's important to have the same faith. The same faith,
yes. The reason that I give is because life goes on even when you're married. So there's so many different things that you will meet as a couple this time, so which means it's kind of multiplied. I'm talking about in terms of sicknesses, difficult situations, from the minor things such as airport troubles when you're traveling together, stressful situations, up to more serious circumstances as in a couple in a marriage dealing with death,
job loss, infertility,
all of those things. And so being able to approach these things, looking at it from the outlook of having very similar principles and values, is important, because that's one thing that's always going to keep you grounded. And especially for us that come from 2 different cultures. I mean, my culture is similar to the Caribbean culture, but it's still different, especially
I don't know if I would say it's similar.
I would say it's more similar than other cultures. I would say it's not like an Asian and a Caribbean or an Asian and an African kind of culture.
True, but it's still very different.
Yeah, it's still different.
And I think one of the reasons why we don't see that difference so much is because our values and our principles are aligned.
Yeah, so when you have that, then you're able to ask yourself the question, you're able to think about certain things and be like, is this something that's just culturally ingrained? Is this because we have stereotypes and we have lenses through which we see the world, and you think, it's just this my own perception of how I see things because of my culture and my upbringing, perhaps from my family background? Or is this something that is actually like a principle that is right or wrong? And you're able to go to a certain baseline, which is the Word of God, and you're able to look at things through that light. And there are certain things that you will agree upon, or there are certain things that you will just realize, oh, okay, this is not meant to be like this. It's just a preference, and it's not wrong if somebody does it differently. And you're able to hash things out, but always with a common background and a common authority. And I think that that's important.
When the Bible speaks about being unequally yoked, I don't necessarily think it's only talking about spiritually. Like, a lot of people take it to mean like, if you're Christian, don't marry a non-Christian, and that's true. I think that's definitely true, but I think sometimes we tend to forget other things, like like intellect,
finances, and in terms of ambition and what they believe their purpose in life is and what they're working towards, different scenarios and different things like that is going to be an important pillar. And even when it comes to Christian, like it should not just be he's Christian. Like there's different levels to it.
Actually, I don't even think the level matters. I think what matters is the desire for more of God in your life. Because some people might take that to mean that if you're a mature Christian, you should marry a mature Christian, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. What I think matters is like how much they seek God or how much they want God. Because I think you can be a baby Christian but have such a strong desire to have a relationship with God that your growth is very different from somebody who's been in Christianity all of their life. So that's what I mean. So all in all, if you're not married, then make sure you guys are aligned on the values and principles that run your life. And if you are married, then try as much as possible to get on the same page. Anyway, so number 2 is another thing that we learned in our 5 years of marriage is that, at least for me, one of the things that I learned very early on is that my partner cannot read my mind, that I need to communicate. And I think I can speak for a lot of women when I say that a lot of the issues that we have with our husbands is because like we have an expectation, an expectation that is not very well communicated. And then when those expectations fail to be met, then there's a lot of conflict, and even in the conflict, like sometimes you're upset and the person doesn't even know why you're upset, and then it could just like snowball into like this big issue. So there were a lot of areas where I had to learn that, like starting from small to big. I would say like celebrations, like birthdays and anniversaries and those things, like I literally had to be, like
to house chores,
like you had to be like, when you're in a relationship, like you have this idea that oh, it's my birthday, he's gonna go all out and he's gonna do this and he's gonna do that, and then when he doesn't, it's like, no, he doesn't love me. That kind of thing. Like that's a thought pattern that goes in your head. But then what I've realized is that just using that example with respect to birthday celebrations, my husband grew up in a household where birthdays are celebrated, but not to the same degree that I celebrate it in. And so when he does not celebrate my birthday the way that I want him to, it's not that he doesn't love me, it's not that he doesn't care, it's just he's just different that way, like how he sees that is different. But then if it's something that's important to me, there's nothing wrong with communicating that, like, hey babe, my birthday is coming up, it's next month. Like
heads up,
like give a heads up, or just have a conversation like, babe, birthdays are really important to me and I want a gift, I want to go out, I want to be surprised, or whatever the case is. So we had to have that conversation with respect to celebrations. We also had to have that conversation with respect to house chores. Like just recently we were talking about it. You remember that book we read? And it was talking about how like two people can be in two different circumstances when they grew up. Where, for example, let's just give a random example. In my household, my dad did most of the chores because my mom worked more. And let's say, for example, in his household, it was the other way around. And then you come into your marriage thinking that, hey, I'm not going to do much because I'll be working, my husband will take care of it. But you come into the marriage thinking, oh, my wife is going to take care of it, that's her job. And so I'm upset because you're not doing anything, and you're upset
nobody's
because
really talking about
it. So that can cause a lot of difficulty, and I think one of the ways that you combat that is by communicating. Like you have to be able to say what you want, say what's bothering you. I know a lot of women struggle with speaking about what's bothering them. They give the silent treatment.
Little things.
They go around slamming cupboard doors or just being quiet, and then you ask what's wrong, and you're like, nothing, and you don't say guilty, okay? But like, you have to be able to communicate, because if there is an issue and the person does not know there is an issue, like, they cannot possibly fix an issue that they don't even know exists. So you have to be able to communicate. And even to other more sensitive topics like intimacy, like being able to talk about what you like, what you don't like, how you like it, etc. All of that, you know, really comes together and makes for a wonderful relationship when you're able to be vulnerable with each other, when you're able to share your innermost thoughts and feelings and know that you're sharing in a safe place and that it's well received. So yeah, that's definitely something that I've learned, to just communicate.
And all of that is one big topic, that's communication, which is key and important. There's tons of books written about it in marriage, communication in marriage. And I feel like this idea or ideology, which is quite common, I find, usually among women, sometimes among single women. I actually saw a meme the other day on a status that was talking about how if he's the one, he will know what you need, when you need it, and all of these things.
Really?
So yes, there's lots of those. It's not the first time, by the way, that I've seen those things. Women posting it. Sometimes not all of them are married.
Actually, you're right. I have seen some of those, like they try to say, like, if the person is the one, then they'll celebrate you well, and they'll do this and they'll do that.
They will know what to say and all of those things, and you don't need. That is the worst advice.
That's setting yourself
That is
up
the worst advice that I've ever heard in terms of relationship. Like, literally, what you're saying is that the person knows you so well they can read your mind, and that, you know, there is no need for communication. Even in the body, where you have different members, there needs to be communication. When there's a breakdown in communication for whatever reason, it's not like you put a plate of food in front of somebody and then the brain goes, okay, well, obviously the hand knows that I should pick up the spoon and eat. Like, until the message comes through the nerves and all of those things to the hands to actually take the food and put it in your mouth and to chew and all of those things, that's not going to happen. So there has to be that communication, that back and forth and receiving. And when you look at it in terms of an entire human being that has an entire background, an entire life story and history, cultural precepts, and sometimes traumas occurring in their life in terms of, you know, very special situations. So, like, things don't always appear as the same, and it's very important that communication, and my dad always used to say, effective communication.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's not just
you
about dropping the one-liners or the hint that, and then you're wondering how is he not getting it, but you're not outrightly coming out and being direct. You just kind of, you know, somebody has to go and be a cryptographer to kind of solve the codes that's been left around. But it's about effective communication, and it's from the little mundane things around, in terms of basic living and just, you know, cohabiting together, to other more important things like birthday celebrations,
as you say that,
or finances and all of those things.
I remember, like, in our early stages of, no, we were not even married, we were dating. Do you remember, like, you would get caught up in the hospital and I would get so upset, and I had to be like, babe, if you're gonna be late, just send a message and say, hey, I'm running late. So, you know, because we worry, or, you know, like, even those little things, like, they make a big difference.
Yeah.
Even, I feel like you can take it further for safety reasons, because I could be like, I know if Ibrahim says he's going to be here at 7 and he's not at 7, then my mind goes, okay, something is wrong, because he probably would have sent a message to say, you know, he's late or something like that. So I think that's very important. Like, even the little things, like, hey, I have a hair appointment next week, so we can't do this, or we have to do that, or we have to reshuffle the schedule. Like, communication, like, plays a very big role in the relationship, for the tiny things to making sure that just you're functioning well as a family, to the bigger things that you're, you know, integrating well as a couple and what.
And your emotions and what you will want and what you like, because you have like, when you get married to somebody, like, you want to know enough of yourself, but ultimately you're still learning things about yourself. So imagine somebody else. Like there's so much that you have to learn, so many things that you have to know about the person. So that has to be like the challenge, to kind of want to always interact with this person. I always want to bounce off things of them and be like, what do you think? And always be open to share, well, this is what I think about this. And that's one way in which you become integrated and become closer. But this idea, usually by women, of usually it is by women, by assuming that your spouse.
Do you believe this guy?
But it's true. It's women usually that have, like, most of the time, women is the ones that have that issue with communicating their feelings or saying.
I don't think so. I think men have an issue as well as women. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but they don't go around. You hardly hear.
Yeah, maybe we.
Like maybe they will have had an issue, and then it's not an issue anymore. But women will literally take it like 3 months down the line, and it will be like cumulative and stuff. But it's usually a case of like, oh, they're supposed to know. No, like, nah. So that's one thing that we've learned.
Yeah, I think we've been doing a better job at communicating.
Yeah.
All right, so another thing that I have learned in my 5 years of marriage was, and I feel like Ibrahim taught me this, and it was, your partner always has your best interest at heart. And that was something that I had to learn, because what I found myself doing was that, like, going to the extreme of things. So let's say, for example, like situations that happened, like my husband was late in surgery because he had surgery. The surgery went on longer than he had planned, so he came home late, and he didn't say anything because wasn't late, and then he just rushed out of the hospital and came home. And I'm home and I'm thinking to myself, oh, Ibrahim he's not calling, and he's so inconsiderate, and why isn't he, why didn't he? And you have that conversation, and I'm fuming. Like, the more time that passes that he doesn't call, I'm fuming because I'm thinking to myself, he's not calling, he's so unkind, he's so inconsiderate. Meanwhile, he's in the OT, upset that the surgery is going on for so long, and all he's thinking about is, Lionel had planned this, and now we can't do it. And so he's thinking about me, I'm thinking about him, but like, my thoughts are negative in the sense that, oh, he's doing this deliberately, when that's further from the truth.
Yeah.
And it happens the other way too. Like, you call, like, just think of a simple situation. Like, you call somebody and they don't answer the phone. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Oh, they saw the call, but they're just not answering.
Oh, so that's you. Some people will be like, they with somebody else.
Exactly.
That's what some, like, this, like, especially like people who are dating and those things, like, that's
exactly.
The first thing you
like
think
the
about.
First thing you think of is that, like, it's something negative happening.
Yeah.
Like, this person doesn't care, or they don't love you, or they're being this, or they're being that. And then sometimes it's just like inconveniences of life. And like, when you hear the situation, you're like, oh, like it didn't correspond. And I think that kind of changes how you approach, like, especially when bad things happen. Like, if you constantly thinking unexpected things happen, if you're constantly thinking that this person doesn't love you, they think you're ugly, they don't care about you, and like, every situation is going to be filtered through that lens, and it's just going to have a negative impact on the relationship.
Yeah.
But then when you think of something else, like, okay, they didn't answer the phone, maybe they're with the kids, or they didn't hear it. Like, that happens all the time. You didn't hear the phone ring. Like, you just call back, and you don't start fuming within yourself because, oh, they saw the phone call and they didn't answer. Like, I feel like it changes the atmosphere of the relationship, where the person is not afraid to walk on eggshells because, oh, they have to answer the phone right away, because if I don't answer the phone, they're gonna get upset because they have. And
there are people whose reality is a little bit like that they feel that way, that if like a little misunderstanding that they might have a lot of explaining to do.
It's going to blow up. And I mean, some of those things are founded, and so I'm not talking about abnormal relationships, like there's infidelity or addiction with porn or
gambling and alcohol.
But that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, just a normal relationship, and I can't speak to those other problems. Just a normal relationship, like, it really does change the atmosphere of the relationship when you just have the base knowledge that this person, your partner, has your best interests at heart, and whatever that's done is not necessarily done maliciously.
Most people will ask, what about those scenarios or those situations, you know, where, you know, there's something is going on, maybe infidelity or some sort of distrust is warranted? And the question usually is it a what if? Because ultimately we live our lives based on trust. Like,
funny you should mention that, because I filmed a recent video. By the time this video is out, it's probably up in the Wife Talk Q&A. I was talking about finances, like how you split finances, and then I was addressing something that comes up often, which is like, how do you have joint accounts when what if you guys get divorced, or what if he cheats on you, or what if you have to leave the marriage? And I was saying that, like, you can't live your life
based on the what ifs,
because then that means, like, there's no trust. Like, you always have this percentage of you reserved for what if this happens, and you can't have like a unified relationship if part of you is always thinking about, I need to prepare for when
X,
I have
Y,
to
Z,
leave.
yeah.
Like,
so that's it exactly. It has to be predicated on trust, and sometimes, I mean, it's hard for different people. Again, sometimes you have different things in the background and etc. But ultimately, in a marriage, that's one thing that we've learned that is very important, which is just one, asking yourself that question: does this person love me, and does this person have my best interest at heart?
And I think that goes back to the first point, you know.
Yeah, if there's a hesitation in an answer to that question, then things can get very slippery, and it can be a slippery slope from there.
I guess you can say, if there's hesitation to answering that question, then disregard. Like, this video is not for you.
Yeah, then there's so much more that probably needs to be explored deeper, perhaps in a counseling session. But if quite honestly the answer to that is a yes, and you do believe that, hey, look, I certainly trust my spouse, I believe that they do love me, and that they do want what's best for me, and then ultimately you have to trust. And trusting does not always mean that you have proof. You don't necessarily have to have proof. I mean, just basic things in our everyday life.
What do you mean have proof?
For example, the other time when we were just talking about this recently in terms of how society works, and just mundane things. We heard
like
a clinical psychologist,
like going to a restaurant, for example. Like, the restaurant owner trusts that
they give you the menu.
They give you the food. Not even the menu. They give you the food. You eat your food. Your belly's full. Like, there is nothing they can do.
And then
the
they come tell you pay for it, right?
Like, there has to be like a certain level of trust in society, because
that's how society works. Because if not,
even the bank,
works.
Like, you have to trust that you put your money in the bank, that
Exactly.
you're gonna get it when you need it.
Exactly. And so we live our lives based on trust, ultimately. And so ultimately you've actually chosen to get married with this person, and you're in a relationship, you're in a marriage with this person, and that mutual trust only makes things better, not worse. But having that level of constant distrust, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a distrust.
And again,
about,
I just want to point out that we're not talking about situations
no,
where
I was not
the
even,
trust has already been broken.
And I'm not
Because
even
it's
referring to a situation. I'm not even referring to those situations, for example, in which, for example, you think, okay, there's a distrust in terms of the principles of the relationship or those things. I'm just talking about something simple as what we discussed before. You come home, and then there's dishes in the sink, and somebody thinks, this person doesn't like me. Like, where
They think
are
I'm the
they?
maid or
You understand? Like just situations like that, or that happens to me personally. For example, like, I'm somebody who's a little bit impatient, and then we'll go and be like, we're going to the store, and then I was like, I'm going to pick up one item. I'm just going to dash in and dash out, and then 15 minutes later, I'm still waiting, and I'm thinking, like those things. But it happens, and then you have to, because there's things you're going to think in your mind, like, this person isn't considerate. Like, they said they were going to do this,
and it can change your entire demeanor.
It changes your entire demeanor, and it's possible that it could be right, and it could be those little fights and squabbles and those things. But
that definitely makes
so it's like little exactly. So it's little foxes.
Yeah, because if you're constantly bickering because they didn't answer the phone on time, they took too long at the grocery store, and every single day there's it wears and tears. It's like wears and tears on the relationship.
It's little foxes in the garden that you have to be aware of.
And I did struggle with that. I feel like our first year and a half, like, I really struggled with just recognizing that not everything that was not done well was because there was ill intent. Like life just happens. Like life just happens. Like, I could go to the grocery store and there could be a long line, and it wasn't my fault that I took long at the grocery store.
And it's a how you call it? It's a predisposed way of viewing things. And
I have a question though. How would you combat being naive? Like, let's say somebody's dating, right? We're not talking about marriage couple. So like, somebody's dating. How do you balance trusting your partner with not being naive and thinking, the best of this person, meanwhile the person really is, I don't know, cheated on you or something like that?
I feel like that's a whole separate conversation. But it's possible to be naive and to be overly trusting. If it's not something that has happened, like there is no history that has broken the trust, then there is no evidence of you not trusting that person. I don't know if that makes sense.
So in other words, no, you don't think you can be overly trusting.
You don't not trust somebody based on a what if. And it's important because most people, when they go into a relationship, and this is a deeper topic actually, because when people go into relationships, they come with it sometimes with baggages. So either they have had previous relationships where somebody, or instances in which they've had people that maybe betrayed them, so there is a certain sense of mistrust, or they have instances of persons betraying trust. So, which is also, just a side note, it's also important the kind of friends that you allow to speak into your life in a marriage, because if you're constantly going to be in discussions with friends who constantly talking about a cheating spouse here and a this there and an XYZ person and how this person doesn't love me and how this person just wants you for the money and all of those kind of things, and then you're constantly immersing yourself in the shows that we have today that sometimes all centered around drama and infidelity and swindling and all of those things. Like it's something that's always going to be at the back of your mind, and then it's going to start rising up at inopportune moments, and that distrust, again, it creates a lens through which you see things. So when you have that lens of immediate distrust, even the things that have a plausible explanation suddenly becomes an iffy situation, like a what if kind of situation. So it's again, it's a lens through which you see certain things. So yeah,
I always say I feel like we need to do a podcast because we can talk for hours on a lot of different things.
No, because these things are, sometimes you do want to just give tips, but sometimes it's a little deeper than that, and there's so many things.
I agree, because I do think that you can't live your life on the what ifs. Like, what if we get divorced?
You
what if he's cheating on me? What if like there has to be a certain level of trust, and if you don't have trust, then you basically don't have a very good relationship or a good foundation for a relationship. But that is definitely different if you're talking about a relationship that there has already been
that's definitely going to be
infidelity
harder.
or that kind of thing. We're not talking about that.
Harder.
I mean, we cannot speak to that. We don't have experience with that, but we're talking about just a regular relationship. And I think it's hard because you have, like you were saying, you can come from so many backgrounds. Like, you could have had a previous relationship where you were badly hurt. You could have had your parents who went through something, or you could have been sexually abused. That could It's a lot of...
And even just general stereotypes. For example, you could have a wealthy man that maybe marries somebody that's maybe not as wealthy as them, and then there is that stereotype of, oh,
Always
maybe this person
wondering that
is
this person wants your
just
money.
there for my money, or even cultural stereotypes of that exist in certain places in the world in terms of Africans,
I
for
was
example.
just about to say that a lot of no, but seriously, when
No, but it is.
Ibrahim first came to Saint Lucia, and because we were dating at the time,
Yeah.
like I literally had people be like, oh, you know, you need to be careful. He's an African.
Yeah, you know.
I like still to this day, like there'll just be an odd comment here and there, like
Yeah.
because you know, well, I don't know if you know, but there is like a stereotype that African men are unfaithful, like especially Nigerians, that they can leave their wife or they have like relationships
Family, or
that
even entire families
that
from back home.
the wife does not know
and,
about.
just talking a little bit of a situation, you had never met my parents.
Oh boy, let's not even get into it.
We're celebrating 5 years of marriage, and just a couple of months ago we were able to travel Sway to
Just
meet
to
our
clear
family.
it up, I did not meet any extra woman.
Or children.
I did not meet any extra woman.
Like, we would not be having this conversation if you had. But those are
There
all,
are stereotypes here.
those are stereotypes, and those stereotypes can affect how you perceive and how you see somebody. So ultimately, when you're looking at marriage, there's going to be that aspect of as well of personal growth, you know, because somebody who you know just lives with the stereotypes and the conspiracy theories, the way they're going to perceive things will always be with the information that they have. But somebody else who's maybe traveled a little bit, maybe met people from other cultures, can be able to think, okay, what I used to think about so and so, that's not
And not just that,
rightly
if you grow in the
accurate.
Lord and you allow the Lord to change your mind and how you think
and
the
how
way
you see people in general, you know.
But I would like to like segue what we talked about into the third thing of what we learned in our marriage, and I think that relates to intentionality. Like we've learned that you have to be very intentional with your relationship, and the reason why I wanted to segue, because you were talking about media and what you watch, and I think that's very important too, because a lot of the times when you talk about intentionality, you think about, oh, you know, make sure you do date nights and stuff like that. But one of the things that I've realized that we have to be careful of in terms of protecting our relationship is that you have to be careful what you feed into your mind. So like, for example, women, you know, I know that a lot of the times we like to read romance novels where it's always this rich guy who knows exactly what to
Preconceived
do
notion.
for the woman and how romantic they are. And when you're constantly reading those romance novels, your man is never going to be good enough. And if you're feeding yourself that all the time, it's going to affect your relationship. And the same thing with movies and the music that you listen to.
Yeah, interesting. Most people actually develop this, you know, impression of what their marriage or what their life should look like, and sometimes it's based on fictitious and fiction, right, that you've read or you've imbibed or you believe to be true, or a perceived appearance, maybe from another relationship, maybe from an older relationship, maybe from even a couple that you see in church, but you only see
On
the surface of
Instagram.
it. Yeah, oh, exactly. But you only see the surface of it.
YouTube.
You're not seeing the
difficulties
details, and so your perceived notion of what a marriage should be or what the ideal relationship should be is going to be different. It's going to be way different. So you come into a relationship, you know, with that, or you imbibe in those things in yourselves, and in reality there's so many details and pieces of the puzzle that you might be missing.
So definitely we have learned to be intentional with our relationship, and especially for us as two professionals with two young kids, like our time is split a lot between working long hours and taking care of the kids. So to protect our relationship, like we've had to learn to be intentional. So even stuff like not just vegging out on TV at the end of the day.
Yes,
like
I was just going to mention that.
Like we've noticed that it's easy, like, you know, like the end of the day, you've had a long day, the kids give a lot of trouble, and it's 9 o'clock, finally you're alone together. You just want to sit on the couch and watch TV. But when you watch TV, I'm not saying there's anything wrong.
There's
with
nothing
watching
wrong
a
with
movie,
it,
but like it doesn't foster a lot of communication.
No, it doesn't.
Like, because you literally, both of you're sitting together,
and
but you're not
watching,
facing each other. You're watching a screen.
And you're not talking.
And then
there's no communication.
you don't want them to talk because you want to hear what's going on. Like, it doesn't foster that development of relationship and communication. And so I'm not saying there's anything wrong with an occasional movie night or something, but you have to be cognizant
of it
not like
overshadowing
the relationship.
Yes,
and even the phone. I have a serious issue with this phone, and it's not because I don't struggle with it, because I do struggle with overusing the phone, but I feel like it is becoming so rampant, so commonplace for this thing here to be in front of us all the time. So you're out to dinner, and Ibrahim and I laugh at it all the time, because we go out to dinner, we're sitting and we're talking, and then we watch other tables and somebody's on the
Everybody's
phone.
on the phone, and it's
or you're at an engagement where everybody should be talking, but everybody's taking a selfie together or trying to record the entire thing, but there's not really like
a connection, a discussion.
Yes.
You could say like getting to actually know somebody.
There's no small talk anymore, because everybody's down. Like, it can fester down into a relationship, in the sense that, you know, you're in bed at night, and instead of, you know, talking about your dreams or praying together, this person is turned that way and the other person is turned that way, because they're watching something on their phone. Like, it's something that you have to be so careful about.
It kind of leads to what we first spoke about. When you have screens and TV and people just watching things, it's a word here and a word there. It becomes almost like a superficial relationship. And it's even worse, I find, during the dating phase of nowadays. Like, it can be something very superficial. Like, you can literally have like before, like, I don't know, like in our parents' times, when people dated for like 2 years or 3 years, they really knew each other, you know, like they really knew one another. Like, most times, like not all the time, but most times. But nowadays, I feel like it's possible to actually know somebody for 2 or 3 years, whether you're dating or not, and then you still feel like, you know, you don't really know them, you know. And sometimes it all boils down to those activities and what exactly you're doing. Are we engaging in conversation?
I think it goes into, like, not just marriage, but the family, like not spending time with the kids because they're busy watching TV, and you're so happy because
and then they're
occupied. You know, in a relationship, you need to be cognizant of that. Yes, it can happen. It does happen. There are seasons where, like, for example, whenever I feel ill, like if I'm coming out of the flu, most of the time I just want to lie down in my bed and watch something because I don't have the energy to do anything. But like, you have to be cognizant so that it's not your everyday, like,
and it's not affecting relationships.
Yeah, but I feel like sometimes you cannot even realize that it's affecting relationships.
It affects communication and the interaction.
It's crazy, guys. It's something.
So if you're not intentional about
need to be
those
careful.
things, then
yeah. So that's our little rant.
Well, here's my last one that I learned. I don't know if it's a rant, but it's a very interesting one, which is for me, one thing that actually surprised me. This is a big one, guys. One thing that surprised me, being married within 5 years of marriage, is how much you have to, you know, be speaking to your wife and complimenting her, and again, intentional about it, and how much you have to relay how much you appreciate your wife and compliment her and all of those things. So I guess this is where it's like, I guess, the opposite of what we spoke about women communicating their feelings to men. Also, this is like the other part of it, in which men also, you have to communicate how you feel about your spouse to your spouse, which is interesting because as a man, and I speak, I don't know, for myself, I don't know if this is similar to other men, tell me, let me know in the comments down below. But when you kind of get married, it's almost like, yeah, I made the decision, you know, I saw this girl, I saw this, you know, like she's XXX, she ticks all the boxes, and I love her so much that I'm going to get married. So it almost feels like
you did the work.
No, it almost feels like 2 weeks later, after you married, she will still come back and be like, babe, you love me? And you're like, well, duh, I married you, so of course I love you.
That's interesting because
so men, I feel like, for me personally, I feel like it's like, I love you, babe. That's why I married you. It's like, I'm with you. Like, why are we having this conversation if I love you or not? So I feel like that was something that was happening a lot when I was younger.
I ask him a lot. It's interesting.
And it's not just that you ask me a lot. I've actually heard all the married men talk about it. Like, it's something I've heard married men talk about, and something that they talk about their wives. And actually have to be like, don't worry. You know, it's normal sometimes for women to be like, you know, like, I'm not pretty, or, you know, like, you don't love me enough, or do you think I'm pretty? Like, does this look nice? And so that's something that I found that was very interesting, like, in these 5 years of marriage, personally. It's like, you know, you constantly, and there's this verse in the Bible in Ephesians 5:26. We'll put it down on the screen, but my interpretation has always been like how Christ washed his bride, the church, with the word. So I've always interpreted it as with your wife, you kind of have to wash away her thoughts as well with the word. So how you speak and how you interact with her kind of helps ease her mind, you know? Because
why are we like this though?
If not, there's things that will creep up, and then they will think, oh, you know, my skin is too like sometimes, you know, things that you'll be like really, we're having this conversation about the one pimple that you've had in years?
That's not true. We don't talk about pimples. It's usually, let me tell you why.
You don't talk about pimples.
Let me tell you why women are like this. Because a lot of the times, you get older. And the older you get, the less attractive you become, worldly speaking. In terms of the wrinkles start to appear. You have kids and now you have stretch marks and your breasts are not the same. And the world puts such an emphasis on aging and how women look worse the older that they get, that it's almost inevitable that a lot of women struggle with that insecurity that they don't look as good as they did
used to before.
And so the natural thought is that your husband is not going to find you as attractive as he used to, etc., because your body has changed, and society just puts this outstanding pressure
and importance on how you look.
And then there's also this impression of how men function, because you know how people say, you know, men function with their eyes and they're attractive, and then you see it too, like older men, when they leave their wives, who do they go to? Younger women. You understand what I mean? So there is a lot of basis for that insecurity. And then there's how we function as well, because Linnell pre-period and Linnell post-period are two different Linnells.
That's the other thing. Like, I listened to that preaching by Dr. Miles Monroe. You know that.
Or the summer, winter, spring, fall thing.
Yes. Dr. Miles Monroe, in his wisdom, said women are cyclical. I was like, oh, okay. And then I got married, and I was like, ha! This is true. It's interesting, but in going back to that other point of how, as a husband, I've learned that you always have to be reassuring to your wife in the different seasons of her life. There's little things and little times during the day, during the week, that you appreciate her. That you look at her and be like, you know, she's really pretty. You know, she looks really good. Or wow, that outfit really fits her. You know, like, so it's for me. It was about. Nice. It's about or the meal was very nice.
Oh, babe, the house was so clean.
Exactly, like how I was saying the other day, whether you know you have magic or something, because I don't know how you do it all. But anyways. At the end of the day, it's just been like trying to remember that when those thoughts come in, to be vocal about it. Because most men think about it, but then it's just like, you don't mention it at the time. So just remembering to vocalize it, like, something that she did that you really appreciated, or she looks a certain way and you really like vocalize it. And I feel like it keeps the love tank up. It keeps all the cobwebs of those other thoughts away. It cleanses her, like the Bible says. And what you spoke about is real in terms of the pressure that society puts on looks and women. But conversely, it's also something that is culturally based, because from where I grew up, for example, from my culture, African background, yes, there is a certain, you could say, importance that's given to looks, but there's other things as well that perhaps could affect other relationships. In terms of, for example, children. In my culture, in my background, like it's not uncommon, even from the books that we've read, the African stories that we've read, like marriages struggle, for example, if there's an infertility issue. So it might not necessarily be something that is necessarily about the looks of the spouse. It could just be something else, like it could be infertility, like having problems with giving birth, or maybe even dealing with the womb, child, different things like that could be an issue that as a husband you kind of have to want to reassure your spouse about, and constantly speak to them and speak into their life, and just love them and just know them and reassure them that I love you. So that's something that's important. And for me, in the past 5 years, I feel like it's one of the things that I learned, that it's just continuous, ongoing, unlike what usually
it's
men.
an area that he's growing in. He is growing in. Still has a lot of growing in.
Indeed. It's one of those areas that you wonder if you'll ever even reach 100%.
Probably might never.
It's one of those logarithmic functions, always approaching but never really reaching infinity. But anyways.
What I do with guys.
What? You married a nerd.
Let me tell you.
Anyways.
It's a long one, as usual, because this guy talks a lot.
They had a heads up, and I'm sure they enjoyed it, and they want more of this and more of things. We could do one about conflict resolution. There's other things that we want to talk about as well. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and let us know what you think about this kind of chats in the comments down below. Let us know which one of the tips, advices, and things that we've learned that you think works for you, and other things that you might have learned in your marriage as well.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you in the next one.